Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc. So today's video, we're going to be covering what makes a good deck a best deck, right? What makes these decks that win these tournaments so unique and what makes them so different from all the competition that they beat out. So we're going to start today's video off kind of slow, and then we're going to ramp up into the more complicated issues, and then by the end of it, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of the concept that we're going for here. This is more tailored for players that might play in only a few events every so often and don't really get into the meta scene and play in big tournaments month after month. So starting with the simple basic mechanics, and then we'll slowly get more and more complicated as the video goes. Don't forget, our memory marker for this month is Kokomon. This is handmade out of clay by my wife, hand painted as well. This is the baby form of Cherubimon. So if you're playing a Cherubimon deck, this is a great memory marker to go ahead and pick up. You can find this on our Etsy store, link in the description below. Also there, you can find all of our previous memory markers we've had on the channel, as well as some of our Battle Ready Inc. merch. Okay, so starting with the basics, what makes a deck function, right? The big part of that is consistency. So one of the basics that you really need to master is your ratios of your deck. So typically, the beginning format was typically 14 rookies, 12 of your champions, right, your level 4s, and then 8 of your level 5s, and then roughly about 6 of your megas. That was like the first initial when the game first came out. That was our general guideline, and even for new players, I think this is still a general good rule of thumb to follow in decks that involve evoing up into a mega. And for your level 7s, for those decks that use them, typically it's about 2. If those megas have to evolve on top of level 6s, then roughly about 2, sometimes 3 if you have like an awkward third one that's like a utility piece instead of like a game ender. But then we started shifting to other things. So we went to a 14, 11, 9, 6 ratio for a while. If you're really dependent on your megas, that's pretty popular, or 5 megas instead of 6. Some decks have even gone as low as running 11 rookies with about 9 or 10 of your level 4s, and I think it's 4 level 5s, and like 4 megas or 3 megas. Those decks are really rare though, and they have other ways to mitigate that, such as purple, who can really draw heavy. Those decks can kind of use those really skewed numbers a little bit for evoing up into their megas, but typically I think for most decks, the 14, 11, 9, and 5 or 6 is a pretty solid one to kind of stick to. Now, after you get that down, what makes the next deck, what's the next key part to be looking at? So you got your ratios down, you need to be looking at consistency. Besides just evoing and drawing like normal, searchers are super good in this game. Very powerful stuff. For blue right now, a big one is Strabimon. So typically you're going to have these rookies that have this on playability, reveal top X amount of cards of your deck, and either add 1 or 2 cards to hand. Like the Strabimon, for example, can add any hybrid and a tamer card, 1 blue tamer card to hand. So if you need tamers and you're running a hybrid deck, Strabimon, cards like that make a lot of sense. Other cards such as Huckmon here is, reveal 5 cards, and then you can add any combination of 2 of the list that it has there. Now, typically all these searchers are very dependent on a very specialized deck, and are fairly uncommon just to be super generic and fit into anything, like revealed X amount of cards and then add like any green. Those do exist, but they are way more limited than you might think. So consistency cards are huge. You can even add in cards that are just kind of generic, like Blanc here, for example. On play, trigger, draw 1. There's also a Gabumon that does the same. So essentially kind of the same thing of evoing, you get that draw. So if you don't want to evo in raising area with your rookie, you can hard play it and you can still get that draw. So having ways to constantly get hand resources are extremely important in this game. Not just for like, oh, I need a level 5 to evo into, but having multiple choices in hand for what to go into. So if you're in a certain awkward situation, your opponent has something on the field that you need to get rid of, you need to have the right level 5. If you're playing 2 or 3 different level 5s in your deck, you need a specific one for that exact situation. It's best if you're in a deck that has lots of draw power or lots of search power. So you have, say you've got both level 5s in hand or all 3 level 5s in hand, because you've done so much drawing and so much searching that you've got like 15 cards in hand, so you've got a good selection to be able to handle any situation. That's a huge factor in this game, is to just being able to have cards that can handle multiple different types of encounters. Now, another big thing that I want to touch on is utility. So you don't need to just have these big beaters on field. And what I mean by beaters is these high DP Digimon that swing in and can kill anything that they touch. You need more than that. You need, if you're playing red, you need to have lots of security attack plus. If you're playing other decks, you need whatever their special mechanic is. You got to capitalize on what that special mechanic is and then kind of go from there. But in addition to that, utility is very important. So for example, I've got this red card up here. When Digivolving, you can play a Digimon card, right? So just when Digivolving, you get to add another body to field. So having utility that does other things. So I've got a nice inheritable here for my big boss monster that comes on top of it. But until I get into my boss monster, I've got another nice little effect that I can use in the meantime. And that's really important for a lot of decks, is to have multiple uses for these cards. Not just I've got this one card in here just for this one thing and it does anything else. Sometimes you do that, don't get me wrong, that is a thing, but you don't want your whole deck to just be that. These cards that are very specific for this exact combo, and if I don't get into this exact combo, this card is useless. You don't want that. You want cards that are versatile, that can be used with lots of different cards, and you don't need one specific like Evo stack, right? What I mean by Evo stack is like your level 3, level 4, level 5, and then your mega on top. You need all these exact cards. When you've only got 4 copies of each in your deck, getting that exact stack is often very difficult. So you need to have to be able to go all different ways from all these different Evo stacks and still have like the same kind of general outcome. But in the process, having utility that gets you there. So this adds a body to field for free. Another good example is Korikakumon here, just for an example of when Digivolving. If you have a certain tamer underneath or another hybrid, you can target one of your opponent's Digimon that doesn't have any Digivolution sources, and it gets frozen, so it can't attack or block until your next turn. So that's really, really powerful, or until the end of their turn, rather. So being able to just let me Evo this card that I want to attack with, but in addition to that, I get to stop one of your Digimon from being able to attack or block. So utility, and that's what I mean by utility, is just having other things happening that isn't related to just swinging and attacking your opponent's security and trying to win. Some decks, that's all they do, like red, that's very prominent, and just let me just build this big super stack and swing for game. But other decks, typically, it's really important to have a lot of utility in your card selection. So when you're picking out these cards, try to pick cards that have multiple uses to them. And this is actually going to kind of lead us into our next point. If you don't have a deck that is just super fast, and what I mean by super fast is you can either spam out a whole bunch of Digimon on field really, really quickly in only a few turns, and then just keep attacking with those Digimon and winning really quickly. Or red, which has security attack plus on its big boss monster, so it can just attack and clear 5 security in a single attack, and they can do that by turn 3 or 4. So if your deck can't do that, you need to kind of reevaluate and then try to make up for that. And what I mean by that is control is one of those big elements here. Korikakumon, stopping your opponent from being able to attack, is what I mean by control. You can stop them from attacking or blocking. You're just shutting down a whole Digimon for the turn. and you do lots of that. And this is just one example, but in blue has tons of different ways to do this. So in one turn, you can, freeze 3 of your opponent's Digimon in one turn. That's very powerful stuff. And then you just repeatedly do that every single turn. Now, you won't be able to freeze all their stuff, but, taking away 1 or 2 attacks from them every single turn is a step in the right direction. Other decks that have control are decks that delete your opponent's Digimon. So just constantly deleting like their whole field or lots of their Digimon. Using option cards is a great way to do that. This card here says for each Digimon with hybrid, Inch-Trait, or Tamer that you have in play, you can delete one of your opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. Typically, they'll have 1 level 6 or higher, and then a decent number, 2, 3, 4 Digimon on field that are level 5 or lower. So this is a great way, 6 cost here, to clear your opponent's board. So you just completely set them back like 3 or 4 turns when you do cards like this. And for 6 memory, you're weighing that cost of literally how much memory does this cost to play versus how much value do I get out of playing this card. And like Gigastorm for red here, just a blanket delete 2 of your opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or less. There's no stipulation. You don't have to control any Digimon. With red's all about just let it happen. We don't need any kind of caveat. Red's just let it happen. Now, it's limited to 2, whereas with this purple card here, you can potentially get, way more than that. But there's the drawback of you have to also control cards yourself to be able to get that kind of value. So there's always a trade-off between these kind of removal cards. So control is pretty prominent in that. Another big card for blue early on was Hexablaumon. So this card, all turns, your opponent's Digimon with no Digivolution cards can't attack or block. So just a big blanket, all your opponent's Digimon every single turn cannot attack or block. As long as they don't have Digivolution sources, they don't get any of that. So, this was a very powerful card at its time, and, it comes in and out of play. But, blue being able to control the opponent's field by stopping them from being able to attack. Other colors being able to just remove their opponent's threats off the board. Green is very prominent in suspending the opponent's Digimon and then attacking over it with their Digimon that often have piercing. So you don't have to give up your attack in trying to hit your opponent's security. You can still attack, delete the Digimon, and control their field, and then still get your security check on the side without worrying about losing any kind of value in swinging in like that. Now for yellow, it can do a bit of control inadvertently. There has been lots of yellow decks in the past, or yellow primary decks that will do a bit of control by deleting the opponent's Digimon, but their main focus is longevity. They can't clear the opponent's security as fast as other decks can. They can't put a whole bunch of bodies on field as fast, Lord Nightmon being the exception, but in general, most yellow decks are fairly slow at clearing the opponent's security. So to make up for that, they need to be able to prolong their game state. They can't really stun the opponent's Digimon like blue can. So what they do is recovery. That's a big popular thing for them, is just play lots of cards that just recovery +1. They have, Magna Angemon here, which we'll probably be seeing some play again here next set. Stuff like Jet Sylphimon, which when it digivolves, it gets a free recovery. Lots of megas that yellow has give them free recovery, and it just builds up their security stack to 9 or 10 security, which takes a while for your opponent to get through. And that's just kind of how they make up for being so slow themselves to clear the opponent's security. It might literally take an opponent that's really fast the same amount of time to clear 10 security as it does for yellow to clear 5. So that's just kind of how the game balances out. And a big popular thing with yellow is when you do all that recovery, you have a higher chance of putting option cards that activate automatically to delete your opponent's Digimon. So they have a higher chance of getting those cards to get put into security just because they keep continuously recovering so much from their deck. So then it's just a balancing act. But depending on the color you're playing and the style of deck that you have built, you just need to balance which one of those strategies you want. Do you want the speed to just clear the opponent's security as fast as possible and win as fast as possible? Don't worry about any sort of defense at all. Don't whatever it may be, control, recovery, stuns, deleting Digimon, whatever it might be. They just forgo all that for speed. Just attack the opponent's Digimon or attack the opponent's security as fast as possible. Red, Rookie Rush, that sort of thing. And now if your deck isn't super fast like that, can't just put out whopping amount of damage by turn 3, then you need to reassess and maybe focus on either control or longevity. So control being those stun cards, or deleting the opponent's Digimon. And if you can't do that, maybe focus in on longevity by having lots of recovery. So it's just whichever thing that your deck can do well, focus in on that. And just pick one of those 3 strategies, and that usually probably will get you to where you want to be. So what about these decks that are winning tournaments is so special, right? Consistency. All the big decks that are winning right now have insane either search power or draw power. They're using cards like Strabimon, like we talked about, or Bokomon, where they're revealing cards off the deck. You're adding 2 things to hand. You play 1 card, you get 2 from your deck. Very powerful. Or your strategies like Purple, which just have really, really powerful draw engines that just, literally by turn 2, they can draw, a quarter or more of their deck with things like Eismon Scatter Mode with Gabumon underneath and Demimeramon. Between the Evos, the drawing for turn, the drawing for the deletion effects on all those, by that point you've drawn a massive amount of your deck. So that's another way. Consistency is huge. So that's a big part of those. And then just having the utility to go with that. The big popular strategy right now is speed. That seems to be the one that's kind of winning out above the other ones over the control and stuff like that. Now that's saying that we have had the recovery decks like yellow still win. We've had the control decks still win. So just balancing the utility of your deck is very important. Now, for just a kind of a side note, if you're playing in a very long tournament, a 10, 11 hour long day tournament, decks that are slow, like the control decks and the longevity decks, those are taxing on the player. So by the time you get to round 8, 9, 10, you're going to start making more mistakes because you're tired. If every single one of your games all day long goes the full 50 minutes and into overtime, by the time you get to those last few rounds, you're going to be so tired, you're going to start making mistakes. But you know whose decks that don't cause them to wear out? That's going to be the decks that play very quickly. And it's either you win fast or you lose fast. A good example of a deck like that is Rookie Rush. Rookie Rush is very much about, I need to win by like turn 4 or 5, and if I don't, then my opponent has probably set up enough defense or what have you that, and I don't have any more hand resources, that they'll just win because if they don't win fast enough, they just can't keep up after that. But those decks are really popular because, 15, 20 minutes for a match. And by that point, then you can get up, stretch, walk around. That's kind of important. Now, if you're playing in locals is 3 to 4 rounds. That's not really a big deal for you. You can play those slow decks, and if that's what you want to play, then go for it. That's a great time to play those because you're not going to wear out after only 3 rounds of a locals tournament. You'll be fine, generally, if you play card games, I would say. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're selecting your deck, depending on if you're going to a big long day tournament or just a locals. That should also kind of factor into your choice as well. And that's a kind of cover everything. So we went over ratios, what kind of ratios you want to run in your deck. Consistency, that consistency is a huge factor. And then also incorporating lots of utility cards. So it's not just about clearing your opponent's field as fast as possible or clearing their security as fast as possible, but you also need to have cards that have some sort of utility that can bring other factors to the table at the same time as everything else that you're trying to incorporate, whether that's speed or control or longevity. You need cards that have other purposes besides just that one main focus. Okay, like I said, doesn't matter which of those 3 you choose. All 3 of them require cards that also do have great utility along the side. And then, just the control, longevity, and speed. Just pick one of those strategies and then kind of focus in and tailor the deck towards that. When you start splitting and diverging and trying to cover multiple different things, your deck is kind of a jack of all trades, but it's not actually good at anything. And typically the decks that are very good at one thing will outperform you in whatever that area is, and then ultimately kind of beat you. It is very difficult to split. It is possible, but it is difficult to split that up. So I hope you found that formative. Hopefully this wasn't too long, and hopefully you'll be topping some tournaments here soon.